If you lost the ability to play all of your gargantuan collection of video games and you were only able to select 5 to hold on to forever, which would you pick? I'll be making that decision today and explain my reasons for each one. I'm focusing on PlayStation games for today's video and more specifically PS4 and 5 games. It's important to clarify that I'm trying to keep the 5 games that aren't necessarily my favorites of all time, but would give me the most amount of enjoyment for as long as possible, because picking 5 10-hour action-adventure platformers sounds awesome, but those will only get you so far, so I really want to be strategic with the choices I make here, which should create a fun challenge. Think of it as being stranded on a deserted island with only the games you pick, although that wouldn't make any sense, because how would you plug in your console? Anyways, they don't specifically have to be console or Sony exclusive, so they are allowed to be cross-platform titles. I'm also allowing online compatibility for this one, so if a game supports multiplayer, that will be taken into account and impact my selection of titles. Conversely, I will not be allowing any support of a collection, trilogy remasters, or multiple game bundles, because that would quite literally give me way more than just 5 games and ruin the entire premise of today's video. You might expect me to just pick 5 massive open world RPGs, but that's not the route I'm going to end up taking, as I want a variety of different gameplay styles, and when you really think about it, right after finishing an entire 60-hour open world game, I would not want to just go back and replay it again, or start another one that's just as long. I need different types of gameplay to diversify what I would have to work with and keep me entertained and engaged for as long as possible. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. And without further ado, let's jump right into my first pick. What I wanted out of my first pick was clear. Anything that I always had a passion to play. Something that at any given time, no matter what, I would be down to pick up and put a few hours into. I haven't picked anything else yet, so there really isn't any criteria for me to fill out. I really have full freedom to pick something I know I'll always love, but still make a somewhat smart decision. My choice for the first pick is actually going to be God of War Ragnarok. I know, shocker. In all seriousness though, it's mainly for the combat and Valhalla DLC, which is something I literally never stop having the urge to play. There are 3 main weapons in this game, the Leviathan Axe, the Blades of Chaos, and the Draupnir Spear, which all feel completely different to use and work perfectly together to fill out Kratos' arsenal. The fact that the Valhalla DLC is free with the game and functions as a roguelike means I can play it infinitely, making it as hard or as easy as I want, and having the freedom to try out new builds, explore new routes, and give myself as many new challenges as I please, whilst also being able to reset from scratch if I so choose. The main game here is really just an addition, and I'm basically picking Ragnarok solely for the DLC, but having the main game just adds more reason for this selection, and will offer me a strong story and very cinematic gaming moments if I ever want to play it, but the vast majority of my time would undoubtedly be spent in the Valhalla DLC. Going to the next game is really where I feel I need to be more strategic moving forward. Don't get me wrong, I think God of War Ragnarok was an excellent pick for me personally, but now I realize that I need to have a variety and lots of replayability. So I'm going with Elden Ring. Not only does this Souls game have one of the biggest open worlds out there, which I can explore forever, but also manages to give so much replay value with all the different weapon types and builds you could go with. Focusing on spells is very different from focusing on one-handed weapons, is very different from focusing on two-handed weapons. There is so much replayability with this one, as your arsenal of tools and abilities at your disposal almost feels endless with how expansive the world and catalog of items is. If I ever feel like exploring an incredibly beautiful world, trying to tackle some of the hardest bosses in gaming, or mix it up with any combat style I feel like, Elden Ring will always be there for me, which is why I picked it. I know I said sticking to massive open worlds wouldn't be a good idea, and that still holds very true. I can just so easily recognize that Elden Ring has so much more to offer than just a massive world that almost makes the open world aspect of it feel like a bonus, making for a great selection here. Although moving forward, I should largely stay away from open worlds to not overwhelm and bore myself. With that being said, my next pick is God of War 3 Remastered. I'm gonna be honest here, this is kind of just a guilty pleasure pick. I just love this game, and I do feel it has plenty of replayability, as every time I play it, I have a great time. Kratos' arsenal of weapons here is arguably on par with what God of War Ragnarok has to offer, although being very different in comparison. It might seem crazy that I'm picking two God of War games, but if you're someone who understands how drastically different the Greek God of War games are from the Norse God of War games, I'm sure you'll see this as a far more reasonable selection. The gameplay, the characters, the atmosphere, the controls, I could go on forever. Pretty much everything feels drastically different, so I think having God of War 3 is a pretty justified selection. The hack and slash combat of God of War 3 is just fantastic and gives tons of potential for learning combos and strategies to spice up the action even more, further adding to the replayability here. This may just be a comfort pick for me, but I'm happy with it, so it's fine in my book. So here we are, only 2 games left to select, and I've picked a hack and slash God of War game, an open world Souls game, and a Norse God of War game, which is pretty much right in the middle of God of War 3 and Elden Ring, as it's semi-open world and also kind of in between hack and slash and Souls-like combat. So from here on, diversity is key. No more action adventure games, we need something different. Pick number 4 is the Crew Motorfest. I really do like racing games as I feel they're different from most everything else that I play, and this one is largely expansive and has many different cars that I can use. I will admit I haven't yet put much time into it, but I can already see how much this one will have to offer me. Just a relaxed vibe, cruising around in whatever car I please, and if I want to up the intensity, I can race as much as I want to as well, giving a great addition of content to this one. It was pretty much crucial at this point in the list to pick something fresh and different, so I think the Crew Motorfest will really work out well in the long run. And now we're down to one final game. And I know what I need, an infinitely playable online multiplayer game. I've never been a huge fan of online games, and I've really always been a single player guy. But in this situation, I pretty much need one to give me something playable with others. Most people would probably take Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, or the up-and-coming Marvel Rivals. But my personal pick here is actually Overwatch 2. I've put so many hours into this game, and I just have a blast with it every time. The gameplay feels smooth and satisfying, and the big roster of different playable heroes, who all play completely different from one another, really adds so much here. It's not like Fortnite where you're using the same weapons every match. There's tons of diversity in playstyles here. There are also many different fun modes you can play for hours on end, and just have a great time with your friends. This is really one of my favorite online shooters, and it works great on PlayStation, rounding out this collection very nicely. So here we have it. If I only had 5 PlayStation games to keep me entertained forever, my selections would be God of War Ragnarok, Elden Ring, God of War 3 Remastered, the Crew Motorfest, and Overwatch 2. This might not be the most creative or the most well thought out, but it's what would work perfectly for me, so I'm happy with these games, and I really do believe they would get me very far just on their own. But let me know what you think of my picks. Do you recommend I swap out any game here with a better alternative? And what would your personal list be? Let me know all that and anything else you'd like to share in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.